After last week's video where I turned Hell of a Boss into a horror story, I started getting tons of requests from people to do the same thing with Hazbin Hotel, one of the other awesome animated creations by Vivziepop, where the Princess of Hell, Charlie Morningstar, creates a hotel to try and rehabilitate demons and sinners. I was totally down for that idea because, for one, I really like Hazbin Hotel, and also I really loved how my Hell of a Boss horror story episode turned out. I had also considered, as lots of people suggested, making this a direct sequel to the Hell of a Boss horror story episode using the same main character, but when I got down to writing, I kinda wanted to make the main character of this story a little bit different. So this story is its own unique thing, but set in the same universe as the Hell of a Boss horror story episode. Very excited to share the story and artwork in this one, so let's get into it, shall we? Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. The closer Medra got to the rundown asylum before her, the more red flags started popping up, alerting her that something was very wrong. She hadn't been able to find anything about this alleged psychiatric rehabilitation hospital online. There were no other people around. She'd been headhunted for the job despite still being in her psychology undergrad, not to mention the near-literal red flag next to her. The young woman leading her onwards, who didn't look much older than Medra herself, yet apparently ran this whole place, was clad in a bright red suit. Not the most calming color to wear around mentally unstable people. Even still, if part of this opportunity was real, Medra wanted to take it. "If you don't mind me asking, Dr. Morningstar," Medra said, forcing an air of confidence, "why is it you want me for this position? I'm absolutely interested, but I don't know if I have the qualifications necessary for it." "Well, you came highly recommended. We were told you believed anybody, no matter what they've done, deserves a second chance, and that makes you perfect for us. Plus, I thought your minoring in theology and occult studies would be an asset here." "Oh?" Medra replied. "Do you have a lot of highly religious patients, or people recovering from cult brainwashing?" "We actually prefer to call them guests, not patients. We don't really do things the conventional way here at the Happy Hotel." They reached the leaf-covered entrance and stood just outside the grimy doorway. Before Medra could press for more answers, Dr. Morningstar asked, "What inspired your interest in occult studies?" Medra's mind raced and her heart thumped. My family, I guess." She hoped the doctor wouldn't try for more. It had been nearly a decade since Medra and her mother had changed their names and moved across the country to distance themselves from her late father's actions. Regardless of whether it would get her rejected immediately or make her a shoo-in for this job, she wasn't willing to bring him up. Dr. Morningstar luckily just nodded in acceptance of the vague answer and threw open the doors. Medra's eyes widened. The place looked totally different on the inside. It was much cleaner and more put together, and as described, it certainly looked more like a hotel than an asylum. There was a wide foyer with plants and couches and a concierge desk, and almost all of it was red. Even the lights seemed to give off an extra faint red hue. And the doors behind her as they closed looked totally different from the inside as well, with the dirty windows now clean, crimson-stained glass. They both walked forward, and Dr. Morningstar fiddled with a set of keys. I need to go grab something. You wait here and I'll be back in a sec to show you around more. Feel free to make yourself comfortable." Dr. Morningstar sped off up the stairs next to the concierge desk, and Medra was growing more and more concerned. She wanted nothing more than to help people, to help them become more sound of mind and lead better lives in the future, but she didn't know if this was really the best place for that. This whole situation was growing more and more worrisome every second, and unfortunately, it was about to get worse. The lights all suddenly flickered, then went out entirely. Dr. Morningstar?" A slow creaking sound echoed through the foyer. Medra's eyes darted around until, through the dark, she could see that a set of double doors a few feet away were slowly swinging open. Through them, down a long hallway, was a silhouetted figure. A tall person with an oddly shaped head walking towards her. Then they stopped, seeming to stare right at her for a moment. They then sped up right towards Medra. Was this a patient? Had a power outage let locked doors open? Should she run? As the figure got closer, she realized just how unnaturally tall they were. But worse still, as they approached, a second set of gangly arms sprung from their side, dripping in slime, then solidified. Medra was paralyzed with fear as the 8-foot-tall figure reached her and leaned its misshapen head down an inch in front of her face.
Well, you look a little lost.
Medra thought she had to be hallucinating this thing before her. Before realizing what she was doing, she'd spun on her heel and was running for the door, but she was quickly grabbed by the neck and by both her arms and lifted into the air.
Where you going? I just wanted to get a look at you. Been a long time since I got a look at a real living, breathing human.
It spun her around and stared its red eyes right into hers. She wheezed in breaths and tried to tear her arms free.
Oh no, what's the matter, Humi? You scared a little of me or something?
Medra swung her leg back and kicked as hard as she could, slamming her foot right into the creature's stomach. It dropped her and she sprinted again for the door.
Oh, is that all you got? That wasn't even enough to get me going, hun.
Medra threw the doors open, but stopped one step out. Outside had totally changed. She was in a city, one that looked like it had been through an apocalypse. The sky was red, and as much as she wanted to think she was imagining it, she could clearly see a pentagram symbol hovering beyond the clouds above. It wasn't too far off from how she'd always pictured hell. Medra panted in fear and confusion. Had this all been some kind of demonic setup? Was this punishment for what her father had done all those years ago? But she'd never even known what he was doing till it was done, and while part of her did still love her late father, she certainly hadn't condoned what he'd been doing when she found out. She whipped back around and the four-armed figure was strutting towards her.
Where you gonna go, gal? Ain't so fun in here, but it's probably a lot worse for you out there.
She had no interest in trying to get by that thing before her, but through the darkness, Medra's eyes set on the stairs Dr. Morningstar had gone up. It seemed obvious that the doctor would have been a part of whatever was happening here, but if there was even the slightest chance she wasn't, that Dr. Morningstar could somehow help, Medra had to take it. While her whole body resisted, Medra sprinted forward, totally unsure if she'd duck under the figure or bolt past it. It crouched into a blocking stance, toying with her.
Come on, where you gonna go, Yumi?
She faked left, then lunged to the right wall, scraping along it as she ran. She got to the stairs and bolted up, only letting herself look back when she reached a bend in the path, and there she stopped. The four-armed figure wasn't chasing her. In fact, it was gone. She looked up and around, but really it was nowhere to be seen. More faint explosions and cries and cackles spilled in from outside and seemed to urge her upwards. Every step creaked, but felt like an alarm calling more creatures unto her. As she moved up, a voice suddenly rang through the building from what sounded like an old, broken PA system.
And she's making her way up. What will she do? What is she looking for? Will she survive another 7 seconds? Stay tuned to find out, everyone.
Was she being watched? Were there cameras? Somehow her most hopeful thought was that this was somehow all some elaborate prank show, but she knew, given what she'd seen, that that was definitely impossible. Medra reached the second floor and stared down another dark, red hall. The only sound now was the recurring slicing of metal against something. It was faint, but every step forward made it grow louder and louder. Medra spoke quietly. Dr. Morningstar? The name had been funny to her as a theology student when she first heard it, but now it felt like a horrible omen, a biblical reference to two different figures, but most commonly associated with the devil himself. Maybe this really was her being punished for the sins of her father. She stopped her calls for the doctor as her eyes set on a faint, red glow in a doorway ahead. Medra stopped in her tracks as she saw light sparks trailing off a blade as the figure ahead slid a stone along the end of a spear, sharpening it and causing the shing, shing, shing of metal that rang through the halls. It slid once more, then stopped. Slowly, the figure's head turned, illuminated by a crimson shifting X hovering in front of her drooping hair and withered pale face. The figure twirled her spear and said, "You don't belong here." Once again, faced with the choice to turn back or push on, Medra had no idea what to do. The being before her approached. Medra remained in indecision for too long. She wanted to speak but was almost hypnotized by the sparking red X leering at her. The figure suddenly reeled back her arm and whipped her spear forward, impaling it in the ground right between Medra's feet. To her shock, she hadn't even flinched, but she thought it was because she was just too terrified to do so. But her eyes shot down to it. This thing could have killed her, and it was so close that hitting the floor couldn't have just been bad aim. Maybe it was just trying to scare her. Medra reached her arms down and ripped the spear free, spinning it around and aiming it at the approaching figure. The creature stopped and gave the slightest snarling smirk.
Bold move, but can you actually use that thing?
Medra ignored the question. I don't want to hurt you, just tell me, what's going on? Why am I here?
You know why you're here.
The figure leapt forward with her clawed hand thrust out. Medra wanted to defend herself, but she couldn't bring herself to stab someone, even this thing. She leaned her spear aside at the last second, cutting a chunk of the figure's hair as it tackled Medra, slamming her to the ground and driving her claw right into Medra's shoulder. She screamed out as a crackling voice rang through the halls again.
Oh, and the feisty little gal is down, but is she out? Is this the end of the line, folks?
The X-eyed creature on top of her called out.
Oh, would you shut up already?
In her distraction, Medra grabbed her foe and used all her strength to roll backwards, tossing the creature off her. Medra leapt up and ignored the pain in her shoulder as she ran forward, switching the spear to her uninjured arm. She bolted right up the next set of stairs, calling louder for Dr. Morningstar, but growing less and less confident about her being able to help. She reached the third, then fourth, then fifth floor with no sign of the doctor, but as she approached the sixth, she slowed, noticing that the hallway above was beaming with red light and hovering, crackling symbols.
Oh, she's gotten so far, but is her confidence waning now, folks? Can she muster the courage to go on? Can she even keep herself alive? It's certainly more than her dear old daddy was capable of.
And there it was, a definitive answer. This was, somehow, because of her father. She thought that confirmation would paralyze her even more, but surprisingly, even to her, it just made her more determined to go on. She held up the spear forward and marched up the last steps to look into the glowing red hall. It seemed like reality was glitching all around her. Radio static echoed through the air. In the center of it all was a red-clad figure with a massive yellow-toothed grin and horns jutting from his head.
Look at you, a real fighter we got here. Putting on quite the little show, and I do appreciate it, missy.
She looked away, not wanting to stare at his horrifying face. Her eyes darted for a second back behind her.
Oh, no, you've come so far, you can't think about going back now. Here, let me help you.
A red glowing wall burst up behind her, blocking her from the stairs. It then started sliding inward, pushing her towards the grinning being. The glitching of the hall got more vigorous as she got closer and closer and closer to the monstrosity before her. Medra's head started to thump with pain from the flashing lights around her. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. She could either wait and see what the monster before her did, or make a move herself. She stomped forward from the wall and held the spear towards the being's head. Let me go! My dad's actions have nothing to do with me.
Well, that's a real shame. I got a lot of respect for your old man. You know how many orphans he made? It was really quite impressive. I've met my share of other cult leaders down here, but he was a real top-notch dirtbag.
The wall nudged her again, and she stepped further forward, with the spear now a few inches from the being's face. Well, I'm not him! I don't deserve this! I don't deserve any of this!
Well, that's really up to you, isn't it?
The wall pushed closer and closer, and behind it, Medra could see the other two creatures she'd faced earlier were creeping up on its other side. She had to make a move. The spear shook in her hand. Could she use it? Would it even hurt this thing? Closer and closer, the wall nudged, and just as it grazed her back again, Medra dropped the spear. I might not understand what's going on, but I came here to help people. I know I'm a good person. You want to punish me for what my dad did, then fine, I guess. But you won't push me to hurting anyone, even something like whatever you are. The figure leaned his menacing toothed face right towards her. He paused for a moment.
You're such a little sweetheart, it makes me want to spew.
He laughed and put a hand on her shoulder, which suddenly healed from the claw wound the other creature had given her.
Satisfied with that answer, Dollface?
The red wall vanished and the lights faded. Past the red figure, Medra could hear approaching footsteps. The crackling, grinning being stepped aside and up walked what somewhat resembled Dr. Morningstar. She had red and white horns, a long devil tail, and piercing red and yellow eyes. She looked past Medra to the creatures behind her. See, Vaggie? I told you she could handle it. Medra darted her eyes back at the being who'd hurled the spear at her.
Yeah, alright, I guess she did fine. She's got my approval. For now.
The four-armed figure, now innocently licking a popsicle, said,
Fine with what? What's going on here? What's with the Hume again?
The X-eyed girl snarled.
We told you like 5 times. Oh, come on, you know I never listen to you, toots.
Medra whipped back around, heart still pounding. I don't understand either. What are you? Why am I here? Dr. Morningstar smiled almost apologetically. For a job interview, you know that. Just maybe a bit more of an intense one than you might have been expecting. And for a slightly different job, too. We are trying to rehabilitate here, just not people, exactly. We could use an optimistic human perspective, but we just needed to make sure you weren't too skittish to work here. But I knew you'd be fine. Like I said, you came highly recommended. I still don't... Recommended by who? Oh, from one of our patients, of course. Morningstar stepped aside and gestured to a figure down the hall who was walking up into view. Medra's heart went from thumping rapidly to practically stopping altogether. When the figure was finally in full view, he spoke. Hi, kiddo. It's been a while, huh? Medra's whole body shook with anger and confusion, but also with the slightest amount of joy. Dad? I'm really enjoying playing around with ambiguity in these horror story episodes. I think I was slightly more successful with how I used that in the Hell of a Boss horror story episode, but I really liked how both of these turned out. And it's confirmed for me that I want to do more episodes like this, turning different things into horror stories, so if you've got other suggestions for that, leave it in the comments below. Or if there's other things you want me to do with Hazbin Hotel or Hell of a Boss characters, give me all those suggestions that you've got. And of course, if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen the Hell of a Boss horror story episode, highly recommended, I'll link it in the cards. And I've also done Hollow Knight as a horror story. You'd probably enjoy that as well. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or uplifting note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is that there are going to be lots of times in life where you're faced with difficult decisions, but what makes it a lot easier is when you have a strong understanding of what your core values are. When you have a firm understanding of those, what your personal morals are, then anytime you're faced with a decision, you can just try to respond to it using those morals and values. So if you haven't before or recently, try to take a minute to think about what your true core values are. I hope that's helpful to someone out there. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.